the Dutch chartered the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, VOC, and opened subscriptions in 6 Dutch ports. By the close of the book, it had attracted 6.5 million guilders, roughly £590,000 at the contemporary exchange of around 11 guilders to £1. This capital was from more than 1,000 investors in Amsterdam alone. The capital was locked into a single permanent joint stock. Subscribers received transferable share receipts that could be bought or sold on the Amsterdam Damrak Bourse. The English East India Company, by comparison, financed its first voyage with a little over 1/10 of the Dutch stake. The English single voyage subscription was intended to disperse profits to shareholders and close after the return of their ships. Thus, as everyone in the European mercantile world could see in 1602, the two companies differed not only in scale, but in design. The VOC pooled resources of all its pre-companies into a long-lived corporate war chest, while the EIC raised just enough bullion to test Asian waters once. Sir James Lancaster has spent 16 months crossing 2 oceans. He arrives at Aceh late in the monsoon season due to being stuck in Torbay and the necessary refits along the way. Sultan Alauddin Riayat Siah of Aceh welcomed them warmly, but the pepper on offer so late in the trading season failed to fill just one of the ships. Lancaster meets Dutch captain Joris van Spilbergen, who is in a similar predicament. The Sultan works with them both to help him deter the Portuguese from the islands, as their Carracks system is counter to his free trade values. A contract is drawn to ambush the Carrack that is due to arrive next month through the Strait of Malacca. The split was agreed as a quarter to cover both the Sultan and the Lord High Admiral's share, and 3/4 split between the English and the Dutch captains. The Lord High Admiral's share was a 10% levy held on behalf of the Crown, which legitimised the English pirating of other nations' ships from a royal perspective. A month later, off the coast of Sumatra, Lancaster and Spilbergen spot the lumbering Portuguese Carrack Sao Tome, which departed from Nagapatnam, having paid Deva Nayaka Chetty a princely sum for his textiles. They manoeuvre into position as pincers at a choke point. Then 38 English guns and Dutch broadsides shred her timbers. The Carrack contains cottons, silks, silver and cloves worth several times the English fleet's outfitting cost. The English and Dutch load their holds and celebrate. Lancaster returns to Aceh to load what pepper they have, then sails on to Bantam. He arrives to a forest of masts, Javanese jongs, Malay lanchas, Chinese junks, Gujarati dhows, Arab baglas, and a sprinkling of Dutch and English tall ships. The air smelled of pepper dust, palm sugar, and sandalwood smoke, and every transaction, whether a bale of calico or a treaty between rival Europeans, ultimately passed beneath the watchful eye of the Sultan's harbour masters. Lancaster sent his number 2, John Middleton, ashore first with presents and diplomatic overtures. Shortly afterwards, he was received in audience by the King of Bantam. The letter from Queen Elizabeth was presented by Lancaster requesting a treaty of amity and license to trade, affirming that the English came peacefully to buy pepper, not to claim territory. The Sultan granted Lancaster permission to trade freely, allowing him to build a trading post and assign warehouses for the purchase of pepper, marking the founding of the East India Company's first overseas base. This diplomatic success was crucial. It turned what had been a speculative, risky voyage into a lasting commercial foothold for England in the East Indies. News from early in the year of the VOC charter and initial public offering reaches the Coromandel coast in late monsoon. Pulicat-dyed calicos were so famous that merchants all along the Bay of Bengal called the whole category Pulicat cloth, even when it was bought hundreds of kilometers away. Devanayaka Chetty carried the cloth by coastal shipping to ports where the Dutch already had access in Bantam and Aceh. Dutch factors paid for it there. No Dutch staff needed to be on the Coromandel itself yet. Coromandel coastcloth is a key part of the Dutch strategy. Chetty hires every idle loom in a 20-mile radius. Weavers work by moonlight. Cotton primes the next exchange rate of empire. While merchants dye yarn, a southern king dyes the map with the blood of victories. The dry winds howl across Penuconda. That ancient citadel perched atop a granite ridge stands alone. A former bastion for the once vast and rich empire of Vijayanagara. Beneath its walls, the ground quivers with the thunder of hoofbeats. Muhammad Qutb Shah, ruler of Golconda, has launched his great gamble, 40,000 horsemen and a forest of cannon, rolling south to break Vijayanagara's last defences. Further north, Emperor Akbar of the Mughals, whose armies had crushed Ahmadnagar just 2 years earlier, and who once seemed destined to swallow every throne in the Deccan, now faces a different storm inside his own walls. His beloved son, Prince Salim, restless, ambitious, dangerous, revolts against his father at the court of Allahabad. Akbar, aging and weakened by illness, turns inward to quell the rebellion of his blood. Watching closely from Golconda, Muhammad Qutb Shah sees his chance. With Akbar distracted and unable to press south, Golconda no longer needs to defend its northern flank. Freed from that mortal shadow, the Sultan gathers his cavalry and cannons, setting his sights on the vulnerable heart of Vijayanagara. At Chandragiri, Venkata II sits stranded, guarded by little more than loyal courtiers and a palace watch. Panic echoes through his marble halls. Portuguese letters from St. Tomé tell of frantic scribes dispatching calls for aid, the emperor's prayers rising as loud as the beating war drums beyond his gates. Then, the great Kelvitalai drum sounds, rolling like thunder across valleys and jungles. Summons ripple through every forest and delta. The empire is dying. Ride now or die with it. Among the 3 great Nayaka houses, only Raghunatha of Tanjore answers in full force. His loyalty forged through his lineage, traced by marriage to the Vijayanagaran kings. With Tamil matchlock musketeers and Telugu heavy cavalry, he forms a roaring flood of warriors. They ascend the eastern Ghats, hoofbeats hammering old stone paths, each step a defiance against Golconda's advance. At Jinji and Madurai, hesitant allies gather token forces, fearing Golconda's guns and doubting the emperor's fate. But Raghunatha rides on, determined to carve his destiny and secure his future power. Under a pale moon, armies crash on the banks of the Pennar. Portuguese chroniclers watch as fighting ignites and tears through the night like wildfire. Cannons roar in the dark, matchlocks blaze, war cries echo across flooded fields. By morning, Golconda's forces crumble. 30 cannons lie abandoned in the churned mud, mute witnesses to defeat. Jesuit letters claim 8,000 dead, an echo of chaos rather than precise count. Penuconda stands free. Vijayanagara, bloodied but breathing, rises again. Next year, 1603, royal crowns change hands. Plague sweeps London, and the company discovers what one spice cargo can do to a balance sheet. Subscribe and sail on through the world's first corporate empire.